Before diving further into the understanding of the mechanism of these wonderful results, first of all, let's realize and let's give ourselves a chance to appreciate the full implications. Because, the first part, okay, this boy is being a lot more accurate in reflecting his emotions and so on, and it must be easier for him to live like this and to smile like, and it's obviously nice for the parents, but there are lots of other problems and so on. So you see, is it really such a big thing? So, and that's why let's be systematic and understand the true values there. So in fact, the mimics improvement and the mimics control development has benefits at least at 5 levels. So emotional, vision and sensory, movements, eating and swallowing, and then voice and vocalizations. So let's kind of go through them. So first point, it's a positive emotional expression accuracy. So this is something which is really, really important to understand. If you look at this scenario for this boy, he's trying to smile, he's trying to express a positive emotion, but the particular controls are failing him. So when, in that sense, his brain is sending the signals for getting the smile, what happens there? He comes up with this sad face. So what's that? That's inaccurate representation of what happens internally. And then there's a whole cascade of the negative things. Imagine you're a parent. So you would be in trouble understanding it, but okay, as a parent, you have the capacity to develop, and learn, okay, so that's what he really means. But now imagine he's being in the situation of being with the other people. How would they read it? They would have big troubles, right? So and the more remote are the people, the more troublesome it is going to be. And then, of course, as we follow this cascade further, that's a major emotional confusion. And then, on top of it, you also see that in his case, he doesn't have much of the eye contact during trying to deliver the emotional participation. So if he delivers the emotional participation, there is no eye contact. If there is an eye contact, there's a trouble with emotional participation. And now think about it. Like, these are essential things. These are the main components of our interaction so that we can see the person in the eyes. And if the person is removing the eyes, our unconscious is actually like blocking the communication. But now, even more important there is this ability to read the other people's face. This is something which also, it's at first, you need to think about it, but that's absolutely critical. So if you want your child to be with other people and actually to exhibit the ability to be empathic and understand how the people behave, what they are up to, and so on and so on, well, the first thing they need is to be able to track what is happening to them, right? So it's in this new scenario that is possible, and before it was very, very difficult. But no less important is the fact that now, if you are having the same type of the responses when you want to reflect, positive emotion, you reflect positive emotion. When you reflect negative emotion, you reflect negative emotion, whilst before those things were confused. So this is really essential for the child to be able to learn the face expressions and the behaviors of the other people. But before you're able to do that, you need to be able to have your own, right? So you see, unless you have an accurate representation of your own emotions, how you can read the others, how you can communicate, how you can reflect and kind of project the things on the others. So that's a first level of understanding that comes from the emotional benefits. Second level is also quite obvious, because vision requires their proper stability of the eyes, right? And then independence from the other activities of the face muscles. But then the vision also comes in a package with the rest of the sensory organs. And for this boy in particular, his greatest trouble has always been the skin. So he's very sensitive to touches in the different areas. So you see, and in fact, even when he was grabbing the toys and so on, he would be doing it in the fashion of not even looking at them. So it's a lot of confusions that he was experiencing. And you see these kind of behaviors which look to you as, okay, so what is he doing? So like, but that is really his attempt to calibrate his own positioning and so on. You see, like this is where he's learned this very interesting skill of not looking into the objects and trying to perceive the area and the object and the things around him by actually switching their vision off. That's what he's been doing. Now he has an absolutely kind of new capacity to explore and do really fine movements, fine touches, and so on, which are then bringing the completely new level of the coordination and the new level of interaction with everything. So that's where we get the improved kinesthetic accuracy, reduction of the hypersensitivity, and of course improve eye-hand concentration. So now it's possible to do those things, kind of control them separately but then combine together. And of course that translates into the improvements of the task concentration and so on. So that's again the aspect that comes with the mimic, with the face control and the mimic muscles. So something that you should clearly keep in mind, that these are the orbitals, so the circular muscles of the orbit, and these are the circular muscles of the mouth. And then you can see all these interactions which are necessary for that proper control and interaction. And then we look at the third level of benefits. So those would be the control of the movements. And now we can get back to the important thing, is that yes, we saw this kind of relatively chaotic presence and large swings of the upper body. Even more so, we have seen the challenges with the kind of external positioning. So where, see, it was very difficult for him to keep the same position. Why? Because in this scenario, it's not the head control that leads the rest of the body. It's actually the rest of the body has to be actively helping, and kind of contributing to the head control, which is never going to be very accurate because it's your eyes which are having the fastest muscle in the body and actually, being supposed to be in charge of the sequence of the coordination. So, and as a result of these newly developed freedoms that we have over here, so what we are getting, we're getting a whole bunch of positive things. So first of all, it's improved positional coordination. So now he can be in the positions and not being distracted by the external factors. Then improved neck mobility and the stability. If you were trying to develop and you were kind of asking yourself a question, why my child is struggling with the head control, so this is a good time to ask, well, what about his mimics? What about the lips control? What about the eyes control? What about the coordination that those have with the inner ear and the deep muscles and the deep ligaments of the neck? So that's, you need to keep in mind, because that's really essential for the whole movement control. And then, of course, we have the improved fine motor skills. So we can see it very clearly. So the person who is able to do this kind of fine micro movements of the fingers is going to be really much better in the total kind of fine motor skill tasks than the child who is struggling overall with this type of scenarios of really like where he needs to do some big resets of his own mouth and his face with his hands. So you see, they continuously kind of lock to each other. They need to help each other instead of being free from each other. So that's a third level of benefit which comes and which spreads throughout the rest of the body. And then, of course, we have all this obvious things such as the improved sitting and trunk stability, which of course makes everything easier, right? So you see he fidgets a lot less, he's a lot less having a lot less discomforts, a lot easier, a lot of things become easier, right? So you see, for example, taking the meals, being with the family members, going for a walk, and so on and so on. And another interesting point is the improvement of the parallel tasks. As you can see in this situation, doing any parallel task would be very, very difficult for this boy. And you see, it's also essential to understand that this type of behaviors, right? So you see, when we look at them from the outside, we're not trained, we're not accustomed to understanding, to trying to extract the meaning and kind of reason behind. So you see, when the boy behaves like this, right? So you see, getting a very accurate representation and so on. So of course, it's much easier for us to read it. And by saying us, that includes the parents as well, because even when it's your child, you're with him all the time and so on. But there is a deep setting in you which is kind of fine-tuned to reading the typical type of the human responses, and that's what wasn't he doing, right? So that's why it's also important that this type of the coordinations and so on give him the ability to do the parallel task. And you have to understand that any schooling in first is a parallel task. Any eating is a parallel task. You have to sit, you have to get the head control, and you have to control your lips separately. So in that sense, that's our fourth part here, the fourth level of benefits. So that's the improvement of eating and swallowing. And again, it's not a surprise because it's an improved food retention, doesn't get out of the mouth. It's improved coordination between the lips and the throat. Because if you start looking deeper and start understanding what's happening there, so you see the control of the peristaltics and the whole swallowing itself, very much is dependent on all these sequences that you have through the mouth and through this coordination that are working there. So the sequence of the participation of the lips is really, really essential, and that's what gives you all the, like most important parts of the swallowing. So, and then, of course, once you're better with your lips, once you're better with your ability to control the food chunk in your mouth, so that also improves things like digestive readiness and timing, because then it's the taste which comes in. It's also the improved tongue participation, which is not being the factor that is disturbing the food, but actually helping. And then then it's also digestive capacity improves, because when there is a pre-readiness of the stomach to receive the food and it arrives properly, all the proper secretions and peristaltis and so on starts working. And then of course on the observable side, it also translates into the things which might be irritating for yourself or for the people who actually have to care for your child, let's say at school or kindergarten or other scenarios, right? So you see a reduction of food spillage and messiness. And in that respect, you're also looking for improved jaws and chewing coordination. So, and then we move to the one more obvious thing there, because in this scenario you can see how much tension is there throughout the neck. So if you look at the new one, and let me find the appearance where you can see probably maybe more of the neck, yes, like this one, you can see that the neck itself is a lot more relaxed, and you can see also the control of the lips. If you're looking at the control of the lips, well, it's quite obvious that production of the sounds and articulation requires very much the control of the lips, so that then they would be coordinating with the throat. So therefore, the fifth level of benefits is the sound production. So through this, we have the improved sound experimentation with the open mouth, with the closed mouth, with the participation of the tongue and so on. And then, I'll state the obvious: improved lips participation, improved voice control, improved tongue participation, and then also helps the child to be a lot more quick, a lot more participant, a lot more kind of integrated, for example, during the speech therapy and just their attempts to communicate with the parents, because he's no longer being stuck or lost in the situation. And all this translates into the reduction of the attention loss. So you see, of course, you can see here for the child in this scenario of being in those periodic discomforts and kind of losses and searches, right, of his own position and his own, like, where is he, and recalibrating of his sensory system, compared to this scenario now, very piercing and very controlling eyes, and so you see this kind of cheeky expression there. It's a lot easier to maintain the attention and a lot easier to participate in everything related to schooling, teaching, learning, communication, and so on. So that's how we started with the emotional aspect, just the gain of the better control of the lips and the more accurate emotional representation. But effectively, we were able to see that 5 levels are related to this. Not only emotional, but also vision and sensory, movements and motor control, eating and swallowing, including digestion, and then voice and vocalizations, right? And there's obviously the factor number 6, which I kind of implied several times but didn't mention. That is, of course, the control of the behaviors and the control, of their learning and ease of learning. So you see, because these situations in which he was before was really creating the troubles for him to study, where he would be periodically having the sensory confusions, coming through the entire face and so on. So of course it's very difficult to keep the concentration in learning, even when he would be interested in subjects and so on. So that's a multi-dimensional benefit. And again, the good thing is that those elements, they came just in a very simple way from improving the controls that are stemming from the newly understood, from the implementation of the new fascia discoveries. I understand that these images might look somewhat gruesome to the untrained eye, but they're very important, because these are the ones which we normally see on the anatomical pictures, showing you the muscles and so on. But that factor kind of takes away the presence of the skin and the layers which are preceding it. It also takes away the clear visibility of the fact that if you zoom in, you see that overall there is no sharp lines, right? So you see, when you look at the artistic representation through anatomy, everything looks very clean and sharp. But if you look through the kind of specimen, you see that there is very blurred scenario. And in that sense, that brings us to the fascia understanding. So, and that's really the key novelty in the entire field of the rehabilitation, which is developing over the last 10-15 years. So the realization that it's not only the muscles which are in charge and which are the leading, but in fact the understanding that the muscles as such belong to the sequence which includes the skin, the mechanical fat, the deep fascia, and then the bone, and all of those are being part of the same continuous system where the muscles are actually embedded. So what we are gaining with the fascia gel is the ability to unglue their troubled links which are coming throughout the skin. In other words, if you want to control the muscles, you need to have the good map that works through the entire skin. And for understanding of those components better, please refer to the explanation video, which is part of this presentation package. But meanwhile, I'm not going to leave you with those gruesome images. I'm going to give you a much clearer one, and this is the one where you can see everything that I was talking about right now. You can see much clearer focus with the eyes. You can see the emotional participation. You can see the control of the fingers. You can see the presence of the parallelism when he's tracking with his eyes, participating with his face, exploring the situation with his hands, and at the same time having much better awareness of the entire situation around him and can interact and like get into the behavioral participation with his parents or whoever else. So that's all coming from a very simple thing. So, and we encourage you to join the program and actually find for yourself that the ABR Fascia Gel could be an easy, helpful solution for your child for a wide range of conditions. So starting from the cerebral palsy of all 5 levels, but also including the genetic conditions and also the children with autism and even milder kids who are diagnosed with the ADHD and hyperactivities as such.